Welcome back to Learning Japanese History with Y, Episode 7. A ship crosses the sea from the Korean peninsula toward Japan. On board, skilled craftsmen, scholars, religious teachers. They carry not gold, not weapons, they carry knowledge. Today's episode is about Toraijin, the Continental immigrants of the 4th through 6th centuries, and the most important question their story raises: technology doesn't travel by itself. So how did it actually cross the sea, take root, and transform an entire civilization? The answer involves supply and demand, political calculation, and a fundamental rewriting of how Japanese society operated. This is Episode 7, The True Identity of Technology Brought by Toraijin. Let's start with the structural framework, the causal chain we'll be tracing through this entire episode. Step 1. Input: migration from the Korean peninsula and the Asian continent. People moved, not abstractions, not influence, but actual human beings who loaded their skills, their books, their tools, and their beliefs onto boats and made the crossing to Japan. Step 2. Transplantation of advanced technology. These migrants brought specific, concrete knowledge: writing systems, iron working techniques, high-temperature pottery firing, silk production, and Buddhist doctrine. Each of these was a technology, some for production, some for administration, some for legitimizing power. Step 3. Protection and support by Yamato royalty. This is the critical link that many history textbooks skip over. Technology doesn't spread on its own. It needs a patron, someone powerful enough to house, protect, employ, and demand from the technology carriers. The Yamato kingship played that role. They actively recruited Toraijin, assigned them to clans, and guaranteed their status. Output: advancement and complexity of society. The result was a qualitative leap in Japan's social organization, from a loose confederation of regional clans to a more centralized, bureaucratic, literate, and militarily capable state. The key insight at the bottom of this slide deserves emphasis: technology does not spread spontaneously. Power-based protection and demand are the catalysts. This is the lesson that runs through the entire episode. Why did this wave of migration happen specifically in the 4th through 6th centuries? The answer is a perfect alignment of supply on one side and demand on the other. Let's start with the push factor. What drove people out of the Korean peninsula? The peninsula was in political turmoil. Goguryeo, a powerful northern kingdom, was expanding aggressively southward. This destabilized Baekje and Silla, the two southern kingdoms, and created enormous pressure on their populations. Technical elites, the people who knew how to smelt iron, fire high-temperature ceramics, read and write Chinese characters, and administer complex organizations, suddenly found themselves on the losing side of a geopolitical conflict. They became refugees, and they needed somewhere to go. Now the pull factor. What drew them specifically to Japan? The Yamato kingship was in an expansionist phase. The 5 kings of Wa, as the Chinese court records call the Yamato rulers of this period, were actively engaging with continental China, sending tribute missions, seeking diplomatic recognition, and above all, hungry for the technologies that would allow them to consolidate power over the other Japanese clans. Think of it as an economic market. Supply: highly skilled technical refugees who needed protection. Demand: a rising power that needed those exact skills and could offer protection in return. When supply and demand align this perfectly, movement happens at scale. This is why the Toraijin migration was not a trickle. It was a sustained, structured flow of knowledge workers across the Korea Strait over several generations. Let's get specific. What exactly did the Toraijin bring? This slide identifies 5 categories, and each one is worth a moment of attention, because each reshaped a different dimension of Japanese society. First, writing and academics, specifically kanji, Chinese characters, and Confucian learning. Before the Toraijin, the Yamato court operated entirely through oral tradition. There was no way to send a written order, record a census, document a treaty, or archive a law. Kanji made all of these possible. It didn't just add literacy, it made the administrative state conceivable. Second, religion, Buddhism. This wasn't merely a spiritual import. Buddhism arrived with an entire visual and architectural culture: temples, sculptures, paintings, and ceremonies. More importantly for the Yamato rulers, Buddhism provided a framework for legitimizing royal authority. A king who supports the Buddha, who builds temples, who spreads the Dharma, that king has cosmic sanction. Buddhism was as much a political tool as a spiritual one. Third, ironware, farming tools and weapons. Iron tools dramatically increased agricultural productivity. Iron weapons dramatically increased military effectiveness. Both were essential to the Yamato project of territorial expansion and centralization. Critically, the Toraijin didn't just deliver iron objects, they transferred the knowledge of how to smelt and forge iron, making domestic production possible. Fourth, Su-ware, high-fired pottery. This may seem modest compared to iron and writing, but it represented a genuine technological leap. Su-ware is fired at much higher temperatures than the earthenware Japan had previously used, producing harder, less porous vessels. This improved food storage, trade, and everyday material culture. A new ceramic tradition was born. Fifth, weaving, silk production. Silk became a major item of international trade and diplomatic exchange. The ability to produce silk domestically changed Japan's relationship to continental markets and gave the Yamato court a luxury good it could exchange, gift, and tax. 5 innovations. 5 dimensions of transformation: administrative, spiritual, military, material, and commercial. Together they constitute not an upgrade, but a civilizational relaunch. Here's the most important conceptual shift of this episode: what the Toraijin brought was not an upgrade to existing tools. It was a rewrite of the entire operating system of Japanese society. Before the Toraijin, the oral and stone era, knowledge was transmitted mouth to mouth. Laws, histories, orders, all memorized and spoken. Tools were made of stone, then bronze. Both approaches had real limits. Oral tradition is vulnerable to error, loss, and the death of individual knowledge holders. Stone and bronze tools impose ceilings on agricultural and military productivity. After the Toraijin, the written and iron era, kanji, represented here by the wooden tablets with Chinese inscriptions, enabled record keeping at scale. A written order travels without its sender. A written law outlasts the person who created it. Written diplomacy makes negotiation between distant parties possible. This is not a convenience, it is the foundation of the state. And iron, represented by the iron sword beside the wooden tablet, didn't just make farmers and soldiers more effective. The combination of iron agricultural tools and iron weapons created a feedback loop. More food meant more population meant more soldiers meant more territory meant more rice to tax and more Toraijin to recruit. The takeaway at the bottom of the slide captures it precisely. Toraijin technology propelled the Yamato court from a confederation of village societies to a centralized state. This is not metaphor, it is the structural reality of what happened between the 4th and 7th centuries in Japan. We've established what was transferred and how profound it was. Now the crucial question: why did it work? Technology transfer fails all the time. Skills arrive and don't spread. Knowledge dies with the person who carried it. Local resistance blocks adoption. Why did the Toraijin transfer succeed? The answer is the three-way alignment of interests shown in this diagram. Let's read it carefully. At the top, the Yamato kingship. What did they get? Administrative capability, the ability to record, organize, and govern at scale, and military power through iron weapons and organized production. This is what they were hungry for. This is why they recruited, housed, and protected the Toraijin. At bottom right, the Toraijin themselves. What did they get? Political status and safety. They were refugees from a war zone. In Japan, under Yamato protection, they received recognized clan status, land assignments, and security for their families. The knowledge they carried was their bargaining chip, and it was an extraordinarily valuable one. At bottom left, local powerful families, the regional lords and clan heads who actually administered the land where Toraijin settled. What did they get? Improved agricultural productivity. Iron tools meant their fields produced more. More production meant more wealth, more followers, more power within the Yamato hierarchy. All three parties gained something they urgently wanted. The Toraijin were protected, the Yamato court gained capability, the local lords gained productivity. When all three interests align, transfer doesn't just happen, it accelerates. The give and take relationship accelerated acceptance throughout Japanese society. This is the political economy of technology transfer. It's not idealism, it's not admiration, it's mutual benefit, precisely calculated. Before we go further, let's address something that matters for both exam accuracy and historical understanding. The terminology we use to describe these migrants has changed, and why it changed tells us something important. The older term was kika, meaning naturalization. It came with a specific narrative. These continental people submitted to Japan out of admiration for the virtue of the Japanese emperor. They came, were impressed, and became Japanese subjects. The problem with this term is that it embeds a political interpretation, specifically, an imperial era, Japan-centric view of history. The nuance is one of subordination, the immigrant coming to pay tribute. Modern scholars now use Torai, or Toraijin for the people, meaning, those who crossed over. It describes what actually happened, migration across the sea, factually. The perspective shifts from submission to Japan to movement across East Asia. It's neutral. It places the migration in the context of East Asian exchange history rather than a Japan-centered narrative of imperial virtue. This matters on exams. Many university entrance exam questions now specifically test whether students know that the preferred modern academic term is Toraijin, not Kikijin. Using the old term doesn't just feel dated, it signals unfamiliarity with current historical scholarship. Now we're ready to zoom out to the biggest picture of this episode. The Toraijin story isn't just about the Kofun period. It reveals what might be called the algorithm of Japanese history, a recurring three-step cycle that Japan has executed repeatedly when encountering advanced foreign technology. Step 1. Acceptance. Japan takes in foreign technology as is, in its original form. The example here is Kanban, classical Chinese, which was adopted directly as the written language of the Japanese court. No modification, no localization. Pure adoption. This is the open hands phase. Receive completely, learn fully, internalize deeply. Step 2. Integration. The imported technology hybridizes with native Japanese culture. It begins to bend, to adapt, to blend. The example is Manyagana, the use of Chinese characters phonetically to represent Japanese sounds, and the broader process of phoneticization that would follow. Chinese writing was being Japanese IFIED. The technology was being absorbed, not just used. Step 3. Transformation. The hybrid produces something entirely new and uniquely Japanese. The example is the creation of hiragana and katakana, the Japanese phonetic scripts that evolved from Manyagana. These scripts exist nowhere else in the world. They are Japan's own creation, born from Chinese raw material, processed through the algorithm, and emerged as something original. The slide notes that this cycle repeats in the Meiji Restoration, where Western legal systems, Western dress, and Western engineering were accepted, integrated with Japanese culture, and transformed into something distinctively Japanese, and again in post-war reconstruction. This is not coincidence. This is Japan's learned strategy for surviving and thriving in a world of more powerful neighbors. Let's bring the Kofun period Toraijin and the Meiji era Oyatoi Gaikokujin, the hired foreign experts, into direct comparison. In the Kofun period, the agents of change were the Toraijin. They brought kanji, which Japan eventually transformed into kana scripts, hiragana and katakana. They brought Buddhism, which Japan eventually fused with Shinto into a uniquely Japanese synthesis called Shinbutsu Shugo, literally, the blending of gods and Buddhas. Two foreign imports, two Japanese transformations. In the Meiji era, the agents of change were the Oyatoi Gaikokujin, foreign specialists, primarily European and American, hired at great expense by the Meiji government to build railways, draft legal codes, teach at universities, and staff hospitals. They brought Western law, which Japan transformed into the Meiji Constitution, a document that combined Prussian constitutional structure with Japanese imperial ideology. They brought Western clothing and material culture, which blended with Japanese aesthetics into Japanese Western eclecticism, the world of the hakama and suit photograph. At the center of this diagram is the phrase, Waken Yosai, Japanese spirit, Western talent. This was the official Meiji-era slogan for the strategy. Absorb Western technology and knowledge while retaining Japanese cultural identity and values. It is, word for word, a description of the accept right-pointing arrow integrate right-pointing arrow transform algorithm. The structure is identical across 15 centuries. The agents change. The knowledge changes. The algorithm does not. One final parallel, and this one touches the world you're living in right now. Artificial intelligence is arriving in Japan, and in every society, the way Toraijin technology arrived in the Kofun period. It is a black box advanced technology, powerful, transformative, and not fully understood by most of the people using it. Just as iron smelting was a mystery to most Kofun-era Japanese, and kanji was a foreign script that required years of study, AI is arriving as an external capability that most users cannot fully inspect or explain. The question this slide poses is direct. How will Japan, how will any society, accept this new intelligence and transform it into something uniquely its own? And the action it suggests is exactly what we've been studying. Apply the acceptance right-pointing arrow integration right-pointing arrow transformation cycle to AI implementation. Don't simply import AI wholesale and use it as is. That's the acceptance phase, and it's only the beginning. The deeper challenge is integration. How does AI hybridize with Japanese language, Japanese work culture, Japanese aesthetic sensibility? And beyond that, what does the transformation phase look like? What genuinely new and Japanese form will emerge from that process? History suggests that if Japan follows its own algorithm, the one it has used successfully with Chinese writing, with Buddhism, with Western law and science, the result will be something that started as foreign technology and became, over time, distinctively Japanese. Let's close with the 3 structural keywords that define this episode. First, social infrastructure. What the Toraijin brought was not a collection of tools. It was the social infrastructure of writing, iron, and religion, 3 interlocking systems that together made a centralized, literate, militarily capable state possible. You cannot have a state without the ability to write laws. You cannot project military power without iron. You cannot unify politically without shared symbols of legitimacy. The Toraijin provided all 3. Second, political patronage. Technology transfer doesn't happen through admiration or accident. It happens through calculated political support. The Yamato kingship's protection and demand, their willingness to house, employ, and elevate the Toraijin, was the decisive mechanism that made the transfer stick. Remove the patronage, and the knowledge disappears when the knowledge holder dies. With patronage, it institutionalizes, spreads, and becomes indigenous. Third, transformation cycle. Japan's particular strength across its history lies in its algorithm. Accept foreign technology fully, integrate it with native culture genuinely, and transform it into something uniquely Japanese. This cycle is not weakness. It is not derivative. It is one of the most sophisticated and successful strategies for cultural and technological development that any civilization has ever executed. Social infrastructure, political patronage, transformation cycle. These 3 ideas explain not just the Kofun period, they explain Japan. That's episode 7 of Learning Japanese History with Why. Next time, we continue into the Asuka period, the age when Buddhism became state religion, the constitution was written, and Japan made its most dramatic leap towards centralized government. The Toraijin built the foundation. Episode 8 is about what was built on top of it. If this episode helped you see the Toraijin as more than a list of vocabulary terms, if you now see them as the carriers of a complete civilizational upgrade, then please leave a like and subscribe. And share this with anyone studying for exams. These structural patterns are exactly what top exam answers are built from. See you in episode 8.